You check the clock. It says 6 p.m. Your work is done. But you don't feel done. Something still feels unfinished and you can't name what it is. The truth is stranger than tiredness. You have not run out of time today. You have run out of a kind of time that barely exists anymore. Think about your evening. You sit down, you open your phone, you tell yourself this is rest. But your thumb keeps moving and your eyes keep scanning, and 20 minutes later you feel more tired than before you sat down. What happened there? You didn't lose the hour. The hour is still accounted for. It's sitting right there in your evening, unclaimed by any job, unclaimed by any boss, and yet it doesn't feel like yours. It feels borrowed, spent before you even chose how to spend it. You call it free time, but some part of you knows that word doesn't quite fit anymore. Free from what? Free for what? You're not sure, and that uncertainty is the whole story. Anthropologists have a name for what you're missing, and it comes from watching people who still live the way humans lived for most of our history. In the 1960s, researchers studying the Hadza people of Tanzania and the Kung San of the Kalahari found something that shocked economists at the time. Hunter-gatherers worked far fewer hours than modern humans. Some estimates put it at 15 to 20 hours a week for actual subsistence tasks. The rest of the day was unstructured, unscheduled, genuinely open. Anthropologist Marshall Solins called this discovery the original affluent society. Not because these communities had more stuff, they had almost nothing by modern standards, no stockpiles, no surplus. But they had something modern life quietly stole from you, time with no purpose attached to it, time that didn't need to be optimized, tracked, or justified. Solins published this idea in 1972, and it upended a basic assumption economists had carried for centuries. The assumption was simple: as technology advances, life gets easier, and easier means more leisure. But the data on hunter-gatherer societies suggested the opposite pattern. The less a society owned, the less its people worked to maintain what they owned. Fewer possessions meant fewer things demanding attention. A full afternoon with nothing scheduled wasn't a failure to be productive. It was simply Tuesday. Now compare that to your day. Even your rest has a job to do. You relax so you can be productive tomorrow. You sleep so you can perform. You scroll so you can decompress, but decompress from what, exactly? Your leisure has become instrumental. It exists to serve something else. And here's the strange part. The moment rest becomes a means to an end, it stops working as rest. This is what economist Staffan Linder warned about back in 1970, in a book most people have never heard of. He called it the harried leisure class. Linder noticed something counterintuitive. As societies get richer and as productivity rises, free time doesn't expand. It shrinks in a different way. It becomes more expensive. Every hour you're not working is an hour of lost potential income, lost self-improvement, lost opportunity. So you start consuming your leisure the way you consume a task. Faster, more efficiently, with one eye on the next thing. You don't take a walk anymore. You take a walk while listening to a podcast, while checking your step count, while half thinking about tomorrow's meeting. 3 activities stacked into 1 hour because one activity alone feels like waste. Linder called this stacking behavior a symptom of rising time scarcity, even in a world of rising wealth. The richer a society becomes, the more valuable each hour becomes, and the more valuable an hour becomes, the more wasteful it feels to spend it on just one thing. So you multitask your way through dinner, through walks, through weekends. You are, without realizing it, applying factory efficiency to your own downtime. Sound familiar? Sociologists John Robinson and Jeffrey Godbey spent decades tracking exactly how Americans spend their hours, using detailed time diary studies that started in the 1960s and continued for over 30 years. Their data revealed something almost cruel. Americans on average have more discrete free hours today than they did 50 years ago. On paper, leisure time went up. But people report feeling more time poor than ever. Robinson and Godbey called this phenomenon time pollution, or contaminated time. Free time exists on the calendar, it just doesn't exist in the mind. It's shredded into fragments, interrupted by notifications, haunted by the awareness of everything else you should be doing. Their research tracks something specific. They asked people to keep detailed diaries of every activity in 15-minute increments across entire weeks. The diaries revealed a strange gap. When asked to estimate how many hours they worked, most people overestimated. When their actual diary entries were tallied, the real number was consistently lower. People felt busier than the clock could justify. Robinson and Godbey concluded that the feeling of time scarcity had become detached from the actual math of time. You can have the hours and still feel robbed of them. Your brain evolved in an environment where a break was actually a break. There was no phone buzzing in your pocket to remind you of 40 unanswered messages. There was no algorithm engineered to make idleness feel like falling behind. Your nervous system still expects rest to mean safety, stillness, and no incoming demands. Instead, you give it a screen full of open loops. Harvard researcher Ashley Willens has spent years studying what she calls time poverty, the subjective feeling of having less time than you need, regardless of how many hours are actually on the clock. Her research found something that should worry anyone who believes more money solves this. People who reported feeling time poor were less happy, more stressed, and more prone to burnout than people who felt time rich, even when their actual income and hours worked were similar. It isn't the hours, it's the sensation of being chased by them. And that sensation has a very old root. For nearly all of human history, time was task-based, not clock-based. Historian E.P. Thompson documented this shift in a landmark 1967 study on how industrialization changed the human relationship with time itself. Before factories and wage labor, people didn't ask what time is it. They asked, is the milking done? Is the field ready? Time was measured by the completion of things, not by minutes ticking on a dial. Once clocks entered daily life, time became something you could waste, save, spend, or lose, a resource, a currency. And once time becomes currency, every unspent minute starts to feel like money left on the table. This is the trap you're living inside right now. Free time, in the old sense, time simply existing, without a purpose to justify it, has almost disappeared. What replaced it is something scheduled to look like freedom. A block on the calendar labeled me time, an evening technically empty but mentally full of tabs still open in your head. Here's the twist nobody tells you. The busier your leisure looks, the less restorative it actually is. Psychologist Sabine Sonnentag, who studies recovery from work stress, found that genuine psychological detachment, truly stopping thinking about tasks, is one of the strongest predictors of whether rest actually restores you. Not the number of hours off, not the number of activities crammed into them, the detachment itself. And detachment is exactly what modern leisure struggles to produce, because most of what fills your free time today is engineered to keep some part of your attention paying rent. Streaming platforms autoplay the next episode before you can decide to stop. Apps notify you the second you look away. Even your relaxation has a retention strategy behind it. Sonnentag studies found 4 separate ingredients of real recovery: detachment from work thoughts, relaxation without effort, a sense of control over how the time is used, and mastery, the small satisfaction of doing something well, even something trivial. Notice how rarely modern leisure delivers all 4 at once. Scrolling gives you none of them. It offers the appearance of control while quietly removing it, since the algorithm, not you, decides what appears next. So what did ancient humans actually have that you don't? Not more hours, not less work, necessarily. They had unclaimed time, time that nobody had figured out how to monetize yet, because there was no market for the inside of a quiet afternoon. Your ancestors could sit by a fire, doing nothing in particular, and their mind was allowed to simply drift, without a notification insisting that drifting was inefficient. You don't need to abandon modern life to get some of that back. But you do need to notice the difference between time that is empty and time that is merely unscheduled. Try this tonight. Sit somewhere with no phone, no screen, no plan. Just 5 minutes. Notice how strange it feels. Notice the urge to check something, anything, almost immediately. That urge isn't boredom, it's withdrawal. It's your nervous system, trained by years of stacked stimulation, unsure what to do with a moment that asks nothing of it. That discomfort is worth paying attention to, because on the other side of it is something your ancestors had access to constantly, and something you may be only borrowing in small, guilty fragments. A mind with nowhere it needs to be. This isn't a call to quit your job, delete every app, and disappear into the woods. That fantasy is its own kind of trap, one more task disguised as an escape. The point is smaller and stranger than that. It's simply noticing the difference between a scheduled gap and an actual opening.